Chapter 19. Spoiler. The Bastard of Istanbul by Elif Shafak. In this spoiler part, we'll provide you with a complete analysis of the book. Don't worry, it's not some boring essay. In fact, we'll answer some quite interesting questions like, what is the significance of naming each chapter after an ingredient of the dessert Ashura? To whom and for what was Zaliha apologizing in chapter 1? And who could be considered the protagonist and antagonist of this novel? So follow along if you want to know the answers to these questions and many others. My name is Haneen. Turn the page. Welcome to another chapter of Between the Pages. If this is your first time joining us on our podcast, welcome. We are your hosts. My name is Haneen.
And my name is Nesma.
We host this podcast where we review books and recommend them for you.
We usually have non-spoiler chapters for those of you who want a spoiler-free review of a book. And spoiler chapters where we simply review the book down to every little detail. Today we have The Bastard of Istanbul, the spoiler chapter. If you haven't checked out our non-spoiler chapter yet, then go and do that.
Yeah.
So we've already talked about a couple of things that we liked about this book in the non-spoiler chapter. I don't think we're going to talk about that again. Today in this podcast, we're going to talk about the title, the characters, each character specifically. We're going to talk about some of the things they did in the story, what we thought of it. And
the history between each family, or the history of each family.
And we have a couple interesting questions today that we are going to answer. For example, what is the significance of naming each chapter after an ingredient of the dessert Ashura, which we're going to answer later on.
Starting with the title, from the interview on Penguin, we realized that the author intended to name the book Baba and the Bastard.
Yes.
But then they ended up with the Bastard of Istanbul.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to weigh them against each other, both titles. I guess let's start with Baba and the Bastard. I think it makes you think that the story is about finding the father and fatherhood and about the whole issue of being a bastard.
So the title Bastard, the Baba and the Bastard, I found something so simple about it. There's something so straightforward with this title.
It gives away the story that it's about the fatherhood and finding the father in your identity.
Yes, because simply the most shocking thing about the whole entire novel is the whole incident rape thing with the... See, I said it. There. There, I said it. The incident was the defining moment of the novel, so I think it would only hurt the novel, so to say, if you were to title Baba and the Bastard.
Yeah.
It's quite clever to name the novel The Bastard of Istanbul simply because it's such a broad title and it doesn't refer to anything specific. It just refers to the character, Asya, basically. Mm-hmm. And Asya in the story is the bastard, basically, who is someone with no past or lineage, as she referred to herself several times in the novel. She herself didn't really want to know her father. I'm kind of linking this idea to the fact that she is she lives without wanting to know her past. Just like the Turkish are denying their past with the Armenians. She only started acknowledging her past when Armanush stepped into her life. After that, by apologizing to Armanush for what the Turks have done to her ancestors, Asya the Bastard becomes the Bastard of Istanbul, because Asya is not just her own person in this story.
Or the bastard of this family, the Kazanki family.
She is representing Turkey, Istanbul as its whole, because she's the one who apologizes to Armanush, or mainly to the Armenians, of what the Turks have done to the Armenians.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I guess her interview, she said that she wanted the title to be Baba and the Bastard to address issues of fatherhood, but it turned out that the story wasn't about that sort of.
No, it wasn't really oriented about the fatherhood thing. I think if it was fatherhood oriented, we would have had Asia more active in searching for her father.
Exactly.
Which she wasn't.
Yes.
You know?
Okay, and I guess this makes so much sense because Asia is sort of the product of the genocide, in a way. So hear this out. The genocide is basically the reason for all that happened. So, okay, so the reason Armanosh's grandmother, Shushan, left her husband, who is Asia's great-grandfather,
Yes.
was because she finally found her Armenian brother and she went home with him to America.
Yes.
Okay? And because of that,
So she left
her son, her
Yes.
only son as well, and her husband. So because of that, her son becomes inconfident and turns out to be cruel in a way.
Turns out to be a bad person.
Yes, because he feels abandoned.
Yes.
And because of that, he takes this out on his children, who one of them happens to be Mustafa and Zaliha. Yeah. And so Mustafa inherits this inconfidence and sort of, I don't know.
I know what you mean, like this scarred personality. There's
Yes.
something missing because his father was missing something, so he's implementing his own issues on his son. So he basically inherits these bad influences
Exactly.
that he
as
has.
well as Zaliha,
As
who
well as
becomes
Zaliha.
provocative and, this person and
who feels like she needs to rebel all
to
the
rebel
time.
all the time and have her own constitution, sort
Yes.
of. And the rest, it happened. Yes, and Asia is here, so in a way, this genocide resulted in Asia.
Yes, if there hadn't been
Yeah.
the genocide, the grandmother wouldn't have to run away. She would have stayed with her son. Mustafa wouldn't have grown up to be a bad person, and Zaliha wouldn't feel the need to rebel, I guess, and everything would have been better. But,
Yeah.
it didn't, so
So
that's how
in the
life
end-
works.
Yeah. So in the end, the bastard of Istanbul.
Yeah.
It's of Turkey because the genocide. You see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So deep, Haneen. So deep. Okay, so the next point that we want to refer to was an interesting question that we read was, who do you think is the protagonist or an antagonist of this novel? We were like kind of brainstorming about this, and we narrowed it down to Asia, or Armanush, or Banu, or Zaliha. And for those were for the protagonists. For the antagonists, we have Mustafa, or history / the genocide. So let's start with who we think the protagonist might be of this novel.
Okay, so to think who is the protagonist, we have to think who moves the story forward. And we thought about Asia, and then we decided no, she doesn't have a cause and effect in a way. Like she's the effect, not the cause.
Yes.
And the one who showed us so many perspectives in the novel was Banu, with her jinn and like going into the past and coming to the future and relating the two families and knowing the secret of her sister and even acting on this knowledge. So she's, because she's the one who knew the most, we followed her, and like we were this with Asia, with Armanush, with Banu, but we know the most because we were with Banu,
Yes, yes.
But in a way, she's the one who moved us throughout the book.
Definitely, yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's definitely an interesting point of view.
And if Banu is the protagonist, then
Mustafa is definitely the antagonist.
Because she's the one who takes revenge on him, sort of.
Basically, yeah. With the whole Ashura thing.
Yeah. And with Zaliha as a protagonist.
Yes. Zaliha, I had an interesting point of view was because the story starts with Zaliha and ends with Zaliha. But does that mean she's the protagonist? Not necessarily. I'll tell you why. Because Zaliha is not... okay, she was the whole victim of the incident. Okay,
Yeah.
She, if she was the we could define her as the protagonist, I would see her as a defining character who stands up for what happened to her, who finds a way to be okay with what happened, and maybe even takes revenge or confronts Mustafa or does something that helps her get out of this cocoon she put herself in. Because she even made her daughter call her auntie.
Yeah.
And that is shows a lot about Zaliha's character. She's afraid, and she's kind of trying to tell them, but she can't. She refuses not to.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes her look like a weak character a little. She hides behind her family. She finds comfort in pretending that everything's fine.
Yes, and keeping on being rebellious, and even she found love. I mean,
she did find love, and I
Yeah.
guess maybe she was content with what she had, and she didn't feel the need to
disrupt
any of it. But here's the thing: I'm trying to understand, because Zali has such a rebellious character. Why didn't she say anything? You
Yes.
know, why didn't she speak up? Why didn't she? I know there are a lot of stories about rape stories where the victims don't speak up and they're ashamed and they don't talk about it because they feel like it's their fault. And
I even saw a documentary about Harvey Weinstein, about the scandal of him raping many of the assistants and like people he worked with, and not calling it rape. He said he keeps on insisting that it was consensuous. But they had interviews with those girls, and everyone described the same thing that was in the book. This wasn't happening. If I just close my eyes, I'm not here, and this wasn't happening. And it was, I found it so interesting when I was reading about it, because it was so similar to those real stories.
yeah.
And I guess she's sort of pretending that it didn't happen, even though
It did.
and she has a child from it, you know?
Yeah.
But one thing I'm sure of is that Zaliha was the protagonist of the first chapter. The first
Definitely,
chapter to me felt like a short story on its own, yes, where she was trying to do something about what happened, and
But she couldn't.
and she failed.
Yeah.
So I guess if we jump to the question of who was she apologizing to.
Let's not answer that question yet. Let's wait.
Okay, we'll wait on that one. Okay. So, yeah, definitely she's the protagonist of the first chapter.
Yeah, I would say so. If we looked at the first chapter as a short story, more like an entry to the novel, I think she would be the protagonist of it.
It was even a trick. We thought she was the bastard in a way.
We did. In a moment, I thought she was the bastard, but moving on.
The bastard wasn't there yet.
No, wasn't born yet. Anyway, okay.
Okay.
So those are for the protagonists. But I know some of you are probably thinking, why don't you pick Asiya as the protagonist of the story? She's probably the easiest choice because she's
in the
title, and she would be the protagonist if we said that genocide is the antagonist. For those of you who don't know, you can pick elements. It doesn't have to be a person as an antagonist. And Haneen and I, we decided maybe that the genocide could be an antagonist in the story because it has a lot of negative impact throughout the story. Like we said, it is the catalyst to all bad things happening in the storyline. So if it were the genocide being the antagonist, Ase would be the protagonist because she's the one who resolves the issue and apologizes to the Armenians as a whole. So she's the one who resolves the issue as a character.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I like this figuring out who's the protagonist antagonist thing. We never did it before.
No, not at all, because it's always a straightforward answer with any other.
I mean, I love this book because it's so challenging. It makes you think.
Yes.
You know? I miss our literature days in high school.
I mean, I've had enough of it in college, but I mean, it's different with you, I have to say.
I was there.
Yeah,
in
of
IG,
course. Okay, so now that we covered the protagonists and the title, we shall move on to the characters. We will start with Mustafa because he's the worst. We'll just get him out of the way.
Okay. And in starting with him, we'll answer the question, what is the significance of naming each character after an ingredient of the dessert ashura?
Each chapter. You said
What did I say?
You said character.
Haha. Okay, yeah, what Nisma said.
Okay, so the reason for naming the chapters after each ingredient of the ashura is because in the end of the novel, where he eats the ashura with potassium cyanide sprinkled on top of the ashura, he dies. Okay, so the idea is that the whole novel paves the way to Mustafa's death. Okay, but you don't know it's paving the way to his death.
Yes.
You haven't even been introduced to Mustafa. You have, but you don't think he's significant in that way.
Yeah.
When we go into the chapter, no, it was Rosewater, right?
Rosewater.
Rosewater,
When the incident
where the incident happens. And like how you're on board with this, with the incident. Oh, you're not, but you're just going along. Where we find out what happened between Mustafa and Zaliha. We even, in the moment where Zaliha was going to pick up Mustafa from the airport, we realize there's something weird going on. Even Zaliha's boyfriend is asking, should I come with you? Wait, you shouldn't go, should you? You don't want to see him. And I'm like, why wouldn't she want to see him? Wait, what's going on?
Is he?
Is he? No. What?
Was that what Banu was hiding from us?
So, I mean, it is obvious that it's paving the way to his death. And there's no other point of view here.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing what she's done.
How she incorporated even the title in the chapter. In each chapter.
Wow.
Exactly.
Mind equals blown. Literally. I love Elif Shafak and her writing. It's amazing. We should read all of her books.
Definitely.
One thing with Mustafa's character that we really wanted to discuss was the reason for why he decided to kill himself with Ashura.
Because it's weird that they believe that the men die early. I mean,
it is. I guess maybe the curse is true. Maybe we don't know for a fact. Maybe it's just something they. Maybe it's a coincidence.
Yeah,
maybe it's a coincidence. It's easy to call it a curse if there's no reason for what's happening in the family. But the interesting thing about Mustafa was all his life from the incident going on, he avoided his family. He built a whole new life away from his family.
At the beginning, we thought it was the regular dream to be an American, forget about your own country, but then
being independent and all that. Yeah, but it turned out to be quite different. Like when in the quote, for example, it was a choice less between life and death than between self-controlled death and sudden death. With such a family heritage, he was sure he would die soon anyway. Now his left hand, his guilty hand, could choose when and how. I mean, it's definitely clear that he kills himself out of fear rather than shame or guilt. He's rather afraid of what might happen if his family actually found out, because definitely throughout the story we realize that Mustafa is like the favorite of the family, being the only son, and he's definitely been a sweetheart to his mother, and the fact that she wants to make him his favorite meals when he comes home, and she's like, and
she still forgives him for not asking about her.
Yes,
all these years.
It's definitely that.
It's die and the truth won't come out, or even if it did, he won't be there to confront it.
Exactly.
That's basically it.
So I guess kind of Banu gave him the easy way out,
It's
rather
face
than,
it.
Yes. Face it head on, be a man.
And face his bastard. And
or be a coward.
And
be a coward and kill yourself. Which is ironic.
It was harsh. Yeah.
Which is ironic because it still takes courage to commit suicide.
Yeah.
It is ironic, isn't it?
It is.
Because there is this notion that those who kill themselves take the easy way out, which yeah, we're not gonna go into that.
We don't agree with suicide, of
we're not gonna
course.
discuss that even.
Yeah.
Whether or not that is true, it is true in this story. It is definitely true. He took the easy way out, and he didn't face his family of the harsh deed that he did. And Zaliha was the one who was left to confront the whole story. I think Zaliha was the only one who was happy with the outcome. Banu was definitely on both sides. I think she was gonna be fine with both of his decisions.
Mm-hmm.
She felt like it was gonna be better if he was gone.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure about other than that. Mustafa is a very hard character to read, I think. Like, I don't know whether to hate him or just like try to understand him. But we did understand him throughout throughout the story. We know the source is his father.
Yeah, and in a way, building up in that chapter, Rosewater, there was the build up of what the why before the thing happened.
Yes.
But that doesn't, of course,
justify anything. Yeah. No, not at all. Just like Elif Shafak.
Yeah.
Okay. That was Mustafa. Enough for him. Enough attention for Mustafa. Let's focus on Banu.
Honestly, she's the most interesting character in the whole novel.
Definitely. The whole jinn thing.
Yeah. And clairvoyant, or now we know how to become a clairvoyant. Just it's like she did like atikaf, I think, in her room.
Yes. Atikaf in her room.
It's so easy nowadays with the COVID-19. You see? Now become a clairvoyant.
Okay, so right off the bat, we can say that Banu is literally the strongest character in the novel. This can be seen throughout her behavior with the jinn, who constantly whispers in her ear time and time again.
And like luring her to do
deeds that she, as a human being, should not be able to, or
like meddle
with. Exactly, that's the word.
But throughout she stayed strong. She only succumbed twice, I think.
I mean, the fact that she resists all these temptation or these abilities, things that she can do.
Yeah. She made it clear that she can have anything she wanted.
Yeah.
Fame and money and everything.
But she chose none of it.
And I love her sort of dua quote, which is like, either grant me the bliss of the ignorant or give me the strength to bear the knowledge. And she repeated it multiple of times. She's facing this tough choice of acting on what she knew or just like resisting of gaining the knowledge, resisting.
It's this idea, is knowledge a curse or a blessing? In some cases knowledge is a blessing, but in other cases, knowledge could be a curse, like you'd find something out you'd never in your lifetime want to know, and khalas, you know it. You can't erase it.
You can't unknow it. Yeah.
You can't unknow it. Why is that not a thing? Why is there no delete button?
And her strength of living with what she knew.
Yes.
Not just there resisting the jinn thing. Living with knowing that her brother raped her sister.
Okay, fine. There, she said it.
And I mean, you have to be strong enough to acknowledge that.
Yes.
And I mean, live with the knowledge and not act upon it. And
it's wow. I'm wondering why Banu never talked to her sister about this. Why did Banu never go to Zaliha and was like, "Hey, darling, are you okay?"
She took care of her.
Are you okay?
Low-key, in a low-key way.
Yes, in a low-key way.
But I wonder if actually that was the right decision to not act upon that knowledge. Because she's the eldest sister. She could do something. I don't know.
She could definitely do something, but she chose not to. Which could be regarded as a good thing or a bad thing, I guess. From several points of view. Like, if you think she's a weak character, saying that she doesn't do anything at all, except in the very last moment.
I think that what drove her to finally act upon what she knows, like that the guilt of not doing anything, maybe. So she decided to take matters into her own hand when khalas Mustafa showed up, so he's here. Like,
the thing is, Banu was a bit religious, wasn't she?
yeah.
Okay, so we know that in our religion, we always think there is a reason for why everything happens. We shouldn't question God's basically decisions of how he wants things to pan out basically in our lives.
Yeah.
So why should we mess with that, you know? And I think that's her strong point of view. I think that's what she's trying to hold on to, you know? The fact that she's a religious person and talks to a jinn, there's some contradiction there. I mean, let's not talk about the fact of how that's not possible.
I like the embodiment of, you know, we have those angels who write our good deeds and bad deeds on each shoulder. I like how creative Elif Shafak got and made them like two jinns, you know, the good jinn and the bad jinn. This is so, like, she gave the story a childish element in a way.
Yes, true.
Like, as if it's a child's story, you know? And you found her relationship with the Mustafa interesting as an elder sister and a younger brother.
Yes. Plus, the interesting thing about Banu was she's the older sister, which means she has an influence on all of the siblings. And in this novel, it was especially Mustafa, which brings me back to the point that I talked to about previously, how Mustafa was escaping the deed that he like the sin that he committed with his sister. How he was like, for example, this quote in the novel will clarify things a little bit for you. Mustafa stuttered as he felt a chill run down his spine. He had always feared his eldest sister. Whatever voice he possessed deserted him the moment he felt Banu's gaze inspecting him. Though she made it a habit to scrutinize others, she herself remained inscrutable. And I love how this fear of dynamic, like, he's a man, you know, he should be able to say something, you know, stand up for himself, but he did something wrong. So all these years he's been escaping basically Banu and the judgment of his sister, you know? And and the fact that once he returns, he actually takes that bowl of Ashura and eats it. You know, like, all these years, dude, you've managed to stay alive, and now you only need to come face to face with your sister.
You know, this reminds me, it's like Banu is the executioner.
Yes.
And remember that story they kept repeating, or maybe they told it once in the book, about it's a real story in our religion, the man who kept escaping from Azrael, the angel of death, and Azrael saw him, I think, in Cairo, and he was, why are you here? I'm supposed to take your soul in China. He didn't tell him. He was like, why are you here? It's weird, you know?
Yeah.
And then the guy went to China, or some other city, or I mean country, and then there he met his death, where he was escaping. The story was told in the novel, and this is basically what Mustafa was doing. He was escaping his death.
Yes, because he knew he'd had to confront his own deed if he returned to his family.
Yes.
And like we said, he took the easy way out by actually eating the ashura with the potassium cyanide on it. All right, so next character on our list is Zaliha, Asiya's aunt/mother. With Zaliha's character, we found a very interesting question. To whom and for what is Zaliha apologizing? So the quote goes like this. She scanned the dinner table, feeling more and more guilt-ridden at the sight of each bowl of rice pudding now canopied by coconut flakes. Then, without turning her gaze, she murmured in a voice so gracefully soft, it didn't sound like her at all. "I'm sorry," she said. "I am so sorry." Now, this is chapter 1. This was the last couple lines in the chapter. This was after she wasn't able to go through with the abortion.
So I guess she could be apologizing to the unborn child of what happened.
Yes.
Or what this child would be.
The fact that this child will have to grow up in such a messed up So,
And that she feels that no child should be born under these circumstances, and maybe she apologizes for not like having the strength of ridding that child of that fate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second thing that she could be apologizing for is her family, since the setting and the people she's surrounded with is her family, so it might be easy to think that she's apologizing to them, and she's saying it in a low voice. So it's like she wants to say sorry to them, but she's like afraid to address what happened, you know?
Yeah.
She's apologizing for the fact that she didn't have enough courage to tell them the truth about what happened to her, I think, and she feels sorry for the huge secret she's keeping.
Like, while reading the chapter and going on with the novel, you'd think she's apologizing for not getting the cinnamon and disappointing them, but
Yes.
it's more than that, you know?
Right, because she did forget the cinnamon. Wow, I forgot about that.
Yeah. But I think what's interesting is why, like you said, Zaliha didn't say anything about what happened. Like, my guess is that she was afraid that her mother would still blame her and tell her
Would
that
turn
it was
against her, yeah.
her fault because of her short skirts or whatever, and would still hold Mustafa in that high pedestal of being the
perfect
boy
son.
and just the boy.
Just the
Not
boy.
perfect. And or she didn't want, but I don't think Zaliha is that selfless. She didn't want her mother to be shocked in her son's actions, and like the one she lost so much.
Yes, to tarnish his
know?
reputation,
Yeah.
basically, yeah.
With his
To
mother.
reveal the person her son actually is, kind of like. I mean,
that would
I
be
think
a blow to her, cause the mother, the grandma Gulsum,
it depends on how much she loves her mother. It depends on how, but I think it's also related to her own point of view. Like, she's scared of being blamed or being misunderstood or maybe even thrown out of the house or family.
yeah.
Something like it. Maybe she's just scared. Maybe she knows she can't raise the child on her own, and maybe she's afraid of jeopardizing that if she says anything.
Yeah.
That was basically Zaliha. I think there's nothing more we can talk about. Maybe there's one thing. I think the one thing that Zaliha chose to do by making her daughter call her aunt. I think by doing that, she's like detaching herself from the fact that she's the mother of this child. You know.
So she's basically doing the same thing
As Mustafa. They're
Yeah.
both ignoring what happened. Moving on to our precious Asya and Armanush characters, which we have a question for as well. On pages 179 to 180, Asya and Armanush discuss their differing opinions on the role of remembrance and the past. With whom do you most agree and why? I'll quote some things for you guys so you can have like a refreshment of what they were talking about. Armanush's point of view was, you have to understand, despite all the grief that it embodies, history is what keeps us alive and united. In return, Asya replies, for me, history starts today, you see. There is no continuity in time. You can't feel attached to ancestors if you can't even trace your own father. So, Armanush believes holding on to history and the past, and Asya believes letting go of the past to live in the present. Which one do we agree with?
They both make sense in their because of their upbringing and
yes,
what they have been told or their life. But for me personally, no, I believe that history, or maybe personal history, of course affects your life. Because it's what you gained basically growing up, and what makes you who you are in a way. But there is a certain freedom of like not acknowledging your past and just living day by day, you know. Nobody can hold you nobody can hold anything against you if you don't acknowledge it, you know.
I think I personally agree with Asya. I think especially I think I'm referring to the novel now. I think if you live in the past for too long and hold on to what happened in the past, how will you ever live for the future? You know, if you always have this thing trying to right the wrong, you basically, you're gonna waste your life on something that's not in your hands. You know, especially Armanish. Armanish is like couple generations after the genocide. And she literally has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. She's even half Armenian.
Yes, she's half Armenian, not even full Armenian. And it's from her grandmother. Like, even her mother isn't Armenian. Like, her mother isn't Armenian. Her father's Armenian, but he doesn't really care about the genocide. I think it's her mother who influenced her about the genocide.
The grandmother,
maybe,
you mean?
I mean the grandmother.
Yeah, probably.
Who influenced her about the genocide. I mean, she's the reason why Armanish wanted to go to the Kazanki
Because her grandmother
family.
experienced the genocide when she was like so little.
Yes. But here's an interesting fact. Asya and Armanish are connected through the past.
Yeah.
So if you didn't focus on the past, how will you ever know they're connected?
Exactly. And that what we learned through Banu when she went to 1915.
Right. Oh my god, what am I even saying? No. I think you do need the past to live.
It's just don't be consumed by it.
Exactly.
Don't just live in the past.
Yes.
Like, acknowledge your past, learn from it, and move forward. But don't just be stuck and like be happy with being the victim, like that guy said in the chat.
Ooh,
Baron
let's get that
something.
one. Some among the Armenians in the diaspora would never want the Turks to recognize the genocide. If they do so, they'll pull the rug out from under our feet and take the strongest bond that unites us. Just like the Turks have been in the habit of denying their wrongdoing, the Armenians have been in the habit of savoring the cocoon of victimhood. Apparently, there are some old habits that need to be changed on both sides. So, he's basically referring to the same idea. Don't cling to the past, either side of them. The Turks are denying the past to overshadow what happened with the Armenians, and the Armenians are not letting go of the past to hold it over the Turks in order to play the victim, you know? And I think for both to live in peace, they both need to acknowledge it and let go of it at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess, like you said, we need to acknowledge the past, but not hold on to it so long that that we're obsessed over it, and that we can't live in the present or the future.
So I guess the last thing we want to talk about is something we found interesting.
Yes.
That the book started with
rain.
With rain and ended.
Rain.
And
ended
with rain as well. And
your brain is shutting down.
Yeah. And what does this symbolize?
Yeah.
And what we think it symbolizes.
Hope we're doing a good job so far. So we think that at the beginning of the novel, it symbolizes chaos and disruption. And it was like in the moment where Zeliha was going to the abortion clinic to get the baby.
It was like the sky's crying for her.
Yes. Indeed. Wow, that's actually basically it.
Despite the knowledge, like from our culture or religion, that rain is a good thing and it brings
it cleanses.
Yeah, because it grows out the crops and like
yes,
it's a source of life, sort of. So to have it so in the opposite side in the first chapter. Even she was
as something disruptive, you know. It's so she was even like
we shouldn't curse
we
the
shouldn't
rain.
curse the rain.
Yeah.
We shouldn't.
So we related to that because it's that thing.
Yeah. And then at the end, when Mustafa's already died and they had the funeral and Zeliha had finally been able to tell her daughter the truth, and they had put him in the ground and she was like saying goodbye to all of it, and she was able to finally let go of the past, you know. We thought that the rain, it symbolizes calmness and resolve and like this cleansing feeling of like washing away all this negativity and all this.
All the bad things that happened.
Yes.
And now they can finally move forward with their lives.
Yes, although I think Asya is going to be scarred for the rest of her life.
Yeah. What she knew was... she shouldn't have known, in my opinion.
No.
And probably that's one of the reasons why Banu didn't want it to come out for Asya, not Zaliha, you know?
Yes, right.
Or the mother or anyone or society. It's just she doesn't want Asya to live with that, you know?
Yeah. It is quite sad.
This novel was so sobering.
Recording it was actually over pretty quickly. Like, I thought it would take us longer than this.
Wow, yeah.
But I really quite enjoyed this episode, I tell you, because it's so analytical, you know? There's so many hidden messages in this novel. And
we didn't cover the half of it.
No, not at all. No. Yeah. We didn't even cover, like, Asya's articles. The ones she's written throughout the whole novel.
And Zaliha's as well.
And Zaliha's. And there's...
the idea of why each character, like you said, of Asya's group wasn't like, didn't have an actual name. It was a descriptive name, sort of. And,
Right. I'm still going to think about this after we stop recording. I'm going to try to figure it out of why she didn't name those characters.
Yeah.
There's probably a reason for it. But I really haven't thought about it. Yeah.
Like, this book needs more. It needs a reread, of course.
Definitely.
And, wow.
I think every time we reread it, we'll find something new that we haven't seen before.
Yes, and that's the beauty of it, you know, of her writing and style. Like you said, it's a literary piece. Thing. Yeah.
All right.
That's it for this week.
This week we brought you a little Middle Eastern novel.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed it.
And not to forget, we should tell them Eid Mubarak.
Definitely. Yes, Eid Mubarak. By the time this episode comes out.
This book wasn't very festive. Sorry, we didn't know.
We had chosen it long before Eid, so we kind of already committed to it, so we needed to pull this through. But anyway, Eid Mubarak to every one of you who celebrate Eid like us. And we'll see you in the next chapter. Thank you for making it to the end of this chapter. That was one sobering story that we like to share with you. Plus, we've been wanting to do something Middle Eastern for a while now. For next chapter, we're picking up a historical fiction standalone novel, The Huntress by Kate Quinn. Actually, in the next couple of months, we're picking standalones of different genres, and we'll need your help in picking between some titles we've had on our minds. And don't forget to follow our podcast on platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, and Remi, and so many others to receive their latest episodes. We post every second Monday. My name is Nesma. Mark the page for chapter 20.